Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast with Dr. Mike Headlee and Dr. Gordon Fimreite, where we'll be exploring different angles of health to achieve the best version of yourself. Now here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gordon.
Welcome everybody. I am Dr. Mike Headlee, and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimreite.
Welcome to the Health Angle. Mike, you have a guest today, so I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce Molly. Molly, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here, Molly. So I'm going to read her bio, and we're going to jump right in, and she's going to enlighten all of us and give us some helpful hints how to be happier and healthier and make our lives a lot smoother and easier. So Molly's lived in the Bemidji area her entire life, growing up on a farm in the Bethsaida area. Graduating from Bemidji High School, Molly worked in customer service for several years and was involved in an area civic organizations. During that time, Molly transitioned into the healthcare field, working as a chiropractic assistant and completing training as an emergency medical technician. She went on to become certified as a nationally registered paramedic and did seasonal work as a wildland firefighter with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Currently, Molly is manager and training coordinator for the Black Duck Ambulance Association, where she is responsible for all the aspects of the ambulance's services, operations, and schedules, and oversees and conducts training classes that include CPR, first aid, first responder, and EMT basic. Molly lives in the Black Duck area with her husband and two dogs, where they enjoy living close to the land and on their small hobby farm. So welcome, Molly. That's pretty impressive.
Well, thank you.
It's very busy and accomplished. And tell us a little bit about your health history. Did you grow up in a healthy family? Tell us a little bit about that background.
I would say overall a fairly healthy person. I think how we looked at things when we were kids was just a little bit different. Not everything we ate was organic and off the farm, but I did grow up on a dairy farm, so, we drank raw milk. My mom was a nurse, but at the time, she really believed in vaccinations and really the overuse of antibiotics. When we had sniffles, we were into the doctor's office. For the most part, we were outside playing. We didn't have cell phones back then. I think I was a teenager. We finally got our first Nintendo, but that actually got kind of boring after a bit. We made our own fun. And so for the most part, happy, healthy, played with friends, that kind of stuff. My dad had a pretty significant heart attack when I was 9 years old. And so we went with that heart healthy menu after that, where of course we're using the vegetable and canola oils, peeling the skin off the chicken. All the stuff that we know now today was not the greatest idea. I just kind of developed into that. I had a lot of headaches growing up, migraines from a young age, started developing a lot of abdominal and stomach digestive issues, which then into my teens was ultimately diagnosed as that irritable bowel syndrome. But better off than a lot of other kids.
Tell us how vibrant your health is right now.
There's always room for improvement, but now living in the best way possible that I can, have a small hobby farm. We have two big gardens. I start my tomatoes and pepper plants from seed in a small greenhouse that I put in my sunroom. We started with one garden. Now we have two large gardens. We do all of our own canning. We raise our own pigs for pork. We have chickens, eating fresh fruits and vegetables as much as we can. And just learning how to cook now with letting the food itself season. We're not using sauces and dips and stuff like that. Plus, I walk a lot. I'm always moving. We are always busy. Sure, I watch TV in the evenings, especially now that daylight is getting to be shorter. But my hands are busy. I crochet, I knit. We're still processing tomatoes. Today I got home from work and I was chopping up vegetables, and we're actually cooking down a batch of salsa right now.
So Molly, Dr. Mike had told me that your lifestyle incredibly healthy. My question is, when did you start getting into the health and wellness aspect? I'm sure we have viewers that are watching this, and I think viewers come from different angles. Some are more engaged than others, and some are not so much. Some are trying to. Maybe they're lacking inspiration. Maybe they're lacking on, where do I start? How do I get started with this? And I think it can be overwhelming because there's so many sources out there. It's like, where do I go? So if you could give any kind of advice for a viewer who's like, maybe they have the inspiration and motivation to get on a healthy lifestyle, but they don't quite know where to start.
Sure. So start small. I've made the mistake myself of jumping into things where I'm going to be super healthy starting tomorrow. So you go and you change everything that you're purchasing in the grocery store, and you look up 20 new recipes, and you just start gung-ho and you go for a 6-mile walk the next day. And it's exhausting. It's overwhelming. It's not going to last. But you take little tidbits as you move along, and you start talking to people. You start reading reliable sources, and just putting a little bit of that in a little bit at a time. So try one new recipe a week. I think I've heard that it's common that we kind of go back to the same 10 recipes that we cook and reuse. So instead of going and buying 30 new vegetables that you've never used in your life, and they're going to rot in the fridge, start with one new recipe that week. Make a meal plan. The best investment I ever made was a $3 magnet that's on my fridge that has the days of the week, and we make a meal plan for the week. We buy those groceries, and then we do as much meal prep as possible, which also includes even buying a package of chicken breasts and baking those with some different herbs and seasonings, and you just have that in the fridge ready to go. Finding time to do this, like, we can't create time, so you actually have to utilize the time that you have in the best way possible. And both my husband and I know how busy lives can be. My life's unpredictable, so is his. He's in law enforcement. We had a plan last night for dinner. He got called out for an emergency call, so we had to improvise. And that's what life is about. Find some like-minded people and positive influences, and that actually might mean going to the extreme of having to end relationships with yourself or like your prior self and those unhealthy habits, but getting the mindset, and it's one step at a time. You know, you don't run a marathon at once. It's one foot in front of the other.
That's good.
Awesome.
Good
Great,
advice.
Yeah,
it's like our old saying, Dr. Mike, that we use a lot here on the health angle: consistency is more important than intensity. And when you were talking, Molly, I was just thinking of rewinding the clock when I started this journey, I should say. And I remember just picking up something like, maybe the first step, I start eliminating toxins like in the bathroom. And I start using more organic shampoos, non-toxic soaps. And then in the kitchen, I just would read one thing and the other and just slowly implement stuff. And I think you got a good point. Don't overwhelm yourself. It's kind of like the people that have a New Year's resolution. They jump into the gym and then they quit right away because they went too fast, too much, too soon. And they're so burnt out they just don't want to continue it. So back to Mike for his next question.
Yeah, I love that, Molly. Weekly planning and keeping it simple, you know, and when you first started off, how you grew up with antibiotics and things, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So if people aren't on the right track, they can get on a different track, and great advice. So I'm curious, Molly, why do you prioritize your health so high, and why is your health so important to you?
I think that one thing I've seen over the last, I just celebrated 20 years at Black Duck Ambulance, and the caring for people, being a caregiver, you see people in not only an emergency state, but in different health levels. I want quality of life. We can extend quantity as much as we want. I mean, Western medicine has proven that, but it's not quality. And so for me, I want my years that I have left to be happy, healthy. I want to enjoy, I want to love myself. I want to love the environment I'm in and be able to just enjoy that and get up and move. It's a terrible thing when you struggle to get up from a chair because your body won't allow you to do that anymore.
Molly, you mentioned about your husband and busy. You're working a lot of hours and doing a lot of things. You have animals at home. You're juggling a lot of things. I know you're involved in community and township and all that. How important it is to have a supportive spouse, and is it absolutely required to actually get to where you want to be? But how important is that to really help you achieve what you want to achieve?
You got to put it at the top of the list. Whether it's a spouse, life partner, whatever you are craving in your life. We are community type people, and so having that partner that supports you, that's on board with you. Over the years, we've tried different aspects where we're kind of on different pages, and knowingly or not, they kind of sabotage. We've sabotaged each other, what we are trying to do. And so there's things that we do on our own. My husband prefers to run. He's a runner and does sandbag workouts and stuff. I'm a walker. So we do some of those things on our own, but we support each other. You need that, because to do it on your own is very difficult.
And then you mentioned walking a lot, and you mentioned weekly meal planning and having a calendar. Tell our listeners what else you track. Like you track food or steps and all that kind of thing.
Yep. So I do track my food. The last several months I've been part of a program. It is an online program through an app. It's a point-based, where there's other things that you can eat that don't count towards those, but it allows you for a little bit of the less desirable type things. I have cut out, I don't eat sugar, processed sugar, or as minimal processed food. My general rule is if I can't pronounce the name, I don't buy it. For walking, you need accountability for both. Whether you have a Fitbit or a pedometer that you put in your pocket, it doesn't matter. Set that goal and stick to it every day. I had over 5 years where I never missed 10,000 steps a day, and sometimes that meant walking on the treadmill at 11 o'clock at night. But I set that goal for myself, and I refused to not allow that to happen.
Awesome. 5 years times 10,000 steps without breaking. That's huge. That's huge.
I have a Fitbit now, so I can use it with the app, but for years I literally had a little pedometer that I kept in my pocket.
Wow.
That was all I needed,
That's great. Those Fitbits, I actually had one. I had it only for 4 weeks because the strap broke off. I used to work out with it and stuff.
Oh, sure.
I was pretty impressed with those. It keeps track of your heart, your anything you wanted to, just about everything in health, including the steps. And it gives you a little warning if you're not quite there. Tells you your sleep, how many hours you're in deep sleep, and pretty impressive. How many years have you been onto the wellness route?
A good 12 to 15. In my late 20s, I think it had accumulated over time, but with leaky gut syndrome and stuff like that, wound up having a pretty significant allergic reaction with anaphylaxis. Wound up doing an elimination diet, so I got off gluten, got off sugar, processed foods, ultimately was allergic to tree nuts. I still avoid those. I'm not quite willing to try it yet. We ferment a lot of our own foods, but just doing those small things is what got me on the kick of how much better I felt. There's so much inflammation in the body when we're putting crap food into it. You literally are what you eat. And so when you start making those healthier choices, your energy level goes way up. You get into a good sleep cycle, and granted, my husband and I both work overnight shifts sometimes. We're all over the board, but having that bedtime routine, making sure that you're getting adequate sleep, that you're drinking water, good clean water, avoiding sugar. That's one of the worst addictions that I ever gave up. I mean, in my late teens and early 20s, I was a smoker. That was super cool.
Wow.
And so that was easier to give up than sugar. And sugar's in everything.
So you work with a lot of different people in your career, all the different things that you do. Is there something you see in general? You see a good spectrum of the population. What would you say the state of the health is in your community, which would be a reflection of probably society.
Yeah, unfortunately, as the years go on, and I've been in this long enough, I really see the deterioration of health, at least the people that I'm working with. And it's a very unfortunate thing. People are living longer, but their quality of life isn't exactly where it should be. Obesity is really going up. Amount of medications, I literally will see people with lists and lists, or come out with a grocery bag full of prescription medications. And it's just that conglomerated with everything, increased cardiac issues, diabetes is so rampant in this area. It's a very unfortunate thing. Now, granted, I don't have as much face-to-face time with the really healthy people because they don't typically need our services, other than if, incidentals that happen. So,
Well, Molly, you're in the ambulance, that line of work. What have you seen as a trend in the last 3 to 5 years?
increased diabetes, heart disease in younger and younger people.
What do you contribute that to?
Sedentary lifestyle, poor eating, poor habits. People just, they don't move. They don't eat well. They don't take care of themselves.
Does their body mass index look different than
Yes.
other people that don't need ambulance services?
Yes. Unfortunately, a high majority of the people that we care for would have a much higher BMI than those that don't. That's
And you see a reflection
common
in
factor.
higher blood pressure and
Yes.
heartbeat and all those parameters as well.
Yep,
Probably the
we have-
blood
yep.
glucose is up there. Interesting.
hypertension, increased blood sugar. Yep, all of those things.
All right, Molly, here's something I hear in my office a lot. I got 2.3 kids. They're in soccer, they're in gymnastics, they're in Boy Scouts, and they're in Girl Scouts, and we don't get home till 7, 8, 9. We're both, people, and everyone's working in the household. I have a really high stress job. You don't understand. My job is crazy. I don't have time. I can't get out of bed. I'm tired. I don't even know what a home cooked meal is. I tear something open and throw it in the microwave, and Domino's is on speed dial. And you have stressful days. You have a busy life.
Right.
You have a lot of responsibilities, swing shift, this shift, that shift, your husband, it's not easy to mesh. What advice do you tell people when there's those stress days and tough days and it seems like things are spinning out of control? How do you rein that in? Be a good example of still getting your steps in, still managing your weight, still eating healthy. How do you make it work, and how can other people make it work?
So you got to pack your food. You need to prepare for those busy days. My 8 to 10 hour days, 12-hour shifts can easily turn into 16 or 18-hour days. Same as for my husband. So I always pack a lunch. I get my smoothie ready. On the days I work, I'm up at 4:45. You have to get ready. You get your coffee made, make your smoothie. You have your lunch packed. You're ready to go. Sometimes you have your downtime, and then sometimes it is just go, go, go all day long. You have to prioritize yourself. You got to take that step back once in a while and even just take a deep breath. Do some stretching. Take 5 minutes. Too many people stop and they want to play on their phone. That's their break. They go and play Candy Crush or whatever it is they're into now. Not saying I don't ever go on my phone. I'm not saying that we don't watch some shows on Netflix and stuff, but you got to keep busy and taking that 5 minutes where I've even gone out to the garage and walked loops around the vehicles, or when my Fitbit yells at me that it's time to move, I go and walk up and down the hallway. Walk your errands. Walk up to the mailbox. Those kinds of things instead of waiting till the end of the day, because a 20-minute walk at the end of the day isn't going to do it for you. And then we wonder why we're cramped up. We have terrible posture. We ache. The arthritis kicks in. Those kinds of things that we can slow down those processes and even reverse them. I mean, I've done the same thing. I've had bulging discs. I have arthritis. But you keep moving and doing those things, like sit in your hot tub. Once a week, I prioritize doing an Epsom salt foot soak for a half hour. If I can get it in twice that week, that's great. But that's my Sunday night routine. You have to make the time, and if you're not using good time management. Make some meals ahead of time that you can take out of the freezer, because we all know that when you're eating that double pepperoni stuffed crust, sure, it tastes great at the time. The fuel you're getting out of that is crappy. It's not helping you, and it's making you more tired. You're going to get that rush, and then you're going to crash. You don't have energy. You're more irritable. Just have to make healthy choices one at a time.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Just as a follow-up quick, tell us a little bit about the psychology. You said if you eat the double crust and the pepperoni, you're kind of low energy or sluggish or bloaty or whatever. What's the psychology of grabbing something at the gas station, eating it on the way home, or pizzas and all that other stuff, like versus farm to table, your own meat, your own canned goods, or your fresh stuff out of the garden? What's that psychologically do to your body, and how do you feel afterwards?
When you take a plate of food that everything on that plate, like my husband even harvests wild rice every year, and so it's hand harvested, and you take that plate of the meat you grew on the farm here, the vegetables you had in your garden, some rice, because I think that we need to get back to carbohydrates are okay in the whole form, the way that God intended. And it's really hard to abuse or overeat whole foods. And so you feel satisfied in your stomach, you feel satisfied in your brain, and you're like, I did this, I made this. And we recently had a potluck at work, and everything we brought, a couple of people there were super impressed by the things that I brought from the garden or that I had canned. And it's just so fulfilling, where I've had those days in the past where you're running, and you do stop at the gas station and grab that chuck wagon, and it's great at the time. It's satisfying. It warms your belly. You're hungry 15 minutes later. You don't get that emotional sense of fulfillment that you do from something that you've created yourself.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yes, so fulfilling.
So as far as someone starting out, what would you recommend? Top supplements? What kind of physical activity and what kind of foods should they gear in towards?
So if you're eating if you're eating good whole foods, the supplements that you need should technically be minimal. But getting a good healthy fish oil, a multivitamin, I always keep probiotics around, so that when I'm having some of those GI issues, it's not like every day's perfect. I'm going to start with those. Even some herbal teas and stuff like that are always great to have in your cabinet to go to. I do 10,000 steps because I know that that's manageable for me. That might not be. Start at 5,000. If you can't walk, how can you walk out to your mailbox? It's 1 foot in front of the other. I found that it's a journey. It's a journey or a marathon. It's not a sprint, so you can't get there really quickly. There's no magic pill. I've been asked, Molly, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Even are you on Ozempic, or did you have bypass? How are you creating this healthy lifestyle where you've lost weight and you're keeping it off? And there is no magic pill. You have to be willing to put the work in, and you have to be able to commit to what you're doing and jump in with that. If it is important to you, you're going to find a way. And if it's not, you'll come up with any excuse. I mean, I hear excuses from people, and you listen and you provide, but I can tell anybody anything I want. But by showing somebody by example, I think has always impacted me the most. When I think back of 2 examples that I had in my life where, my dad had the biggest sweet tooth there ever was. He loved frosting and cookies, but he lived a lifestyle growing up that he could do that. They had 5 meals a day, but he worked hard his entire life, and he was always busy and moving. If you sit still and you're sedentary, it's not going to last long. You got to move.
That's great. And then just a follow-up question. What book or what type of website would you recommend to our viewers?
I get daily articles from Dr. Mercola. They're fact-checked. Even just uplifting positive speakers, not necessarily that are preaching to you about what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, but surrounding yourself with like-minded people who lift you up. Misery loves company. So to me, that's a bigger thing. Asking people, find a chiropractor, listen to your body, ask what other people are doing or what they're reading, and be open to trying it out. Borrow books to each other. There's a lot of resources out there.
That's great. Thank you.
So Molly, it kind of sounds like it starts with your mindset. You got to get your mind right, because you gave us action steps from weekly meal planning to how many steps in grow food and start simple. It seems like it starts with mindset for you. And then on that same vein, you think it's possible for the everyday person listening to this, walking down the street, to achieve what you have, holiness and happiness and health, and had ups and downs, but you're at a really, really good place, but you aren't going to stop because you're going to keep doing what you're doing. Is that within reach for all of us to do what you do?
It is. It's the epitome of, I work long days, I have a busy life. No, I don't have children, but I have 2 dogs that I would argue keep me plenty busy. It is absolutely achievable because you have to decide what you want out of life. And so life's too short to not be happy and to not be healthy. So setting a goal that's within reach. We don't want anything too far out of reach. And then just starting with that one step at a time. Keep a journal. Getting your mind in that right mindset, whether you choose to see a counselor or there's some other health issues that you need to address, that I'm not a professional in that area, so I don't have much to say about that, but write down how you're feeling, both on your bad days and your good days. Write down your accomplishments. It doesn't need to be anything significant like Dear Diary, but just a date, because you can go back to that and you'll remember, I felt so crappy doing that. And I've had setbacks over the years. A few years ago, my dad got very ill. He wound up passing away. I went down into a pretty dark place myself. Over time and having to do a reset both in my heart and my head, you will find a way to move forward. And I've been lucky enough and humbled enough through life experiences that when I've been feeling a little bit sorry for myself, like I've had a pretty bad day, I tend to come across somebody who's having a much worse day, and then I have to say I really don't have that much to whine about. I live in the most beautiful place in Minnesota. I have a great husband who cares about me, 2 dogs. That's one thing. If you're lacking motivation to get out and walk, get a dog. They will not let you forget that you need to go out for a walk. Find fulfillment in the work that you do. If you're going to your job every day just for the paycheck, you're in the wrong profession. You need to love what you do. Doesn't mean I don't have bad days, but I come home and I have my little safe, quiet place that I just do a little reset, go to church, have some type of faith, whatever that is, so that you have somebody besides people to rely on.
That last couple minutes, Molly, was so chock full of information. I don't want people to gloss over that. So if you're listening to this or watching this, you got to rewind that, because there's a lot of nuggets in there, and we just kind of gloss over it and we just talk like it's routine for you. But if this isn't routine for our listeners, you need to really listen to this again and take some action steps, because it is chock full of the game plan on how to get started and how to live a holy, happy, healthy life. So thank you for sharing that, Molly. Well, Molly, with our time running down, any final words of wisdom or advice for our listeners?
We're human. Give yourself some grace. If you have one bad day, don't give up. Oh, I didn't get my 10,000 steps today. Might as well go eat a bag of candy bars. It's not how it works. Tomorrow's a new day. Sometimes you just have to reset and add things in one at a time slowly, or take away things one at a time slowly, because then it becomes routine, it becomes habit. And then pretty soon you're doing it without even thinking about it. You'll enjoy that walk. I look forward to it. 40 below days, I'm out walking the dogs. Might not be as far as it was when it's 75 degrees in the summer, but you have to make yourself do it.
Awesome. I love that. Give yourself grace, never give up. Start small, add things in, like baking a cake. You don't just throw it all in quick. You got to put it in slow and easy and stir the pot and get some habits going. And great advice. I end our podcast, Molly, with asking our listeners, what is the number one takeaway that you can discuss with a friend tomorrow at work or at home that Molly shared? What's your number one discussion going to be tomorrow at work or with a friend on your walk? And lastly, what's your number one action step that you can take today? You're going to write out a plan. You're going to plan your meals tomorrow or the next week. You're going to set some goals. What are you going to do differently based on what Molly shared with you in her inspiration and action steps? So what's your number one action step that you can take today? Thanks, Molly.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Health Angle podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and catch us for our next episode.